Good morning, students. Well, some of you probably won't be up in time for it to be good morning, but whatever. Today I'm going to put together a math lesson with some videos for you because we're starting a new topic, and that topic is statistics. And so here's a little bit of an introduction to statistics, and I'm going to try to put all of these videos up so you have links to them to watch them again if you need to or anything like that. But here is the introduction to statistics.
It takes a lot of skill and practice to become a professional basketball or football player. But who do you think gets paid more, basketball or football players? If you look at a graph like this, you can see which league has the highest minimum salaries for their players. But the graph shows you more than that. It also shows you how the salaries rise depending on a player's years of experience. Graphs can show us a lot of things in a clear and simple way, by making a visual representation of the data. But not all graphs are the same, and not all graphs are suited for displaying the same data.
Graphs are useful in displaying information, but all graphs don't display information in the same way. A bar graph compares sets of data, a line graph shows changes over time, and a circle graph compares parts of a whole. Here is some data on the average monthly rainfall for Portland, Oregon, and Portland, Maine. Which graph would be the most appropriate for displaying this data? A line graph, a bar graph, or a circle graph? Because the graph is showing changes in data over time, a line graph will display the data the best way. And because there are two sets of data, we will make it a double line graph. First, a title. Let's use something catchy like average monthly rainfall. It's straight and to the point. Next, we need to add the labels. At the bottom, we add the label months, and then we list the months January through June on the x-axis. On the left, the label is rainfall, inches, and we list the inches from 0 to 6.5 up the y-axis using an increment in which each box represents 5/10, or 1/2 of an inch. The legend is next. The legend is the key to what things mean on the graph. The red line represents rainfall in Portland, Oregon, and a blue line represents rainfall in Portland, Maine. Let's plot the data for Portland, Oregon first. For January, we plot a point at 6.24 inches. For February, we plot the point at 5 inches. And so on until all the data is represented on the graph. Then we connect the points together with a red line. Next, we do the same for Portland, Maine, except connect the dots with a blue line. Ah, a work of art! Let's put this graph to work. In which months was the rainfall in Portland, Oregon greater than the rainfall in Portland, Maine? Look at the graph and see when the red line is above the blue line. Portland, Oregon receives more rain in January, February, and March than Portland, Maine. Looking at the graph, compare the rainfall in April, May, and June. How would you describe the graph? What does it tell you about both places during those months? We can see that Portland, Maine receives more rain during those months and that it is much drier in Portland, Oregon in June than it is in January. Helping us quickly compare all kinds of data is what graphs do best.
All right, so there's an introduction to statistics, and as you can see, we're going to be looking at a lot of graphs and being able to take and understand what those graphs mean is what we're going to be doing. So that's your statistic opener. Next is what we're going to do today. And today we're going to be dealing with the idea of what is a statistical question. And the statistical questions are what are used to make the graphs. So in this case right here, Mr. Borden wants to ask his class a question that will give several different answers. Which question could he ask? And here are the two different questions. What is the area of one sheet of notebook paper? And the other question is, how many sheets of paper do you use each week? Now what we're looking for is a statistical question. We want several different answers. So which one of those should he ask? You can think about that yourself as we go on. So let's work through that right now with another scintillating video for you. Okay, not scintillating, but at least it'll help you out. Some killer graphics.
What is a statistical question? Mr. Borden wants to ask his class a statistical question. A statistical question is a question that anticipates there will be different answers in the data. Which of these questions is a statistical question and why? Is this a statistical question? Explain. What is the area of one sheet of notebook paper?
Okay, so if you look at this one, we want different answers if we want a statistical question. So does this provide different answers? So if you look at one sheet of paper, and if we want to know the area, there's your formula, length times width. A standard piece of notebook paper is 8.5 inches by 11 inches. If you multiply them together, you get 93.5 inches squared. So the area of one sheet of paper is this. So is this a statistical question?
There is only one area for a sheet of paper. Since there is only one answer, this is not a statistical question.
So let's go on to the next one.
Is this a statistical question? Explain. How many sheets of paper do you use each week? Since there are many possible answers, this is a statistical question.
So when you take a look at this right here.
The question Mr.
Sorry, I meant to pause that before. If you ask that question, you're not going to get the same answer from each person, because if you write very, very large, not to mention any names, Mackenzie, or very, very, very small, you are going to use different rates of paper each week, so you're going to get different answers.
Gordon should ask to get different answers is, how many sheets of paper do you use each week? The question, how many sheets of paper do students in my class use each week, is a statistical question, or a question that anticipates there will be different answers in the data. Why is the second question a statistical question?
And so here they just want to make sure you understand. This is the second question right here. Why is it a statistical question? And you have to remember that it's because it will provide different answers. One person says I use 5. Another person would say I use 10 sheets, 15 sheets. But at the first one, there is only one answer, and only one answer would answer that question, not a statistical question. We want questions that are going to provide us with many different answers. There might be the same answer, like one student might use 5 and another student may also use 5, but that 5 is not going to be the only answer.
The number of sheets of paper students use in a week is an example of numerical data. Each value can be represented with a number. Categorical data is data that is grouped by some common properties such as days of the week. Mr. Borden can display the answers to this statistical question using a bar graph. The bar graph shows the information collected by Mr. Borden. What information related to the statistical question can you tell from the graph?
So now we have the graph form. Although we're only working on statistical questions today, you can see how now the graph right here is going to carry all of the data because there's different answers. So here's the number of sheets down here at the bottom, and then here's the number of students right here along the side. So you can now, hopefully, you can tell by this graph several different things.
You can tell that different numbers of students use different numbers of sheets of paper per week. How many sheets of paper do most students use each week?
And then hopefully you'll be able to tell that answer. Give you a couple seconds here. So we're looking for most students use how many pieces of paper per week?
"25 sheets. How does the bar graph show this? The longest bar is shown above 25 on the horizontal axis of the graph. Remember that a statistical question is a question that anticipates there will be different answers in the data. What are some other examples of statistical questions you could ask a group of people? Other examples of statistical questions could include, what time during the afternoon do you do your homework? How many hobbies do you have?
And those are a couple more examples there for you. And there's the end of that spectacular video, or just the mediocre one. And we are going to go through a few more here. As soon as it comes up. So this right here is just the definition of a statistical question. So it's a question that anticipates that there will be different answers in the data. So if I ask a question and there is only one answer, it is not a statistical question. But if I ask a question and there could be multiple answers to that, that is a statistical question. So let's take a look at these here for a second. Which one of these is a statistical question? We're looking for questions that have multiple answers. First one, what is your favorite menu item for customers in the local restaurant? Then you need to think to yourself, is there only one answer? Or could there be multiple items as an answer? So what do you think? Favorite menu items for customers in the local restaurants? There will be multiple answers because each person will have their own favorite. There might be a repeat, but there's going to be different answers. What about number two? Or not number two, but this dot. What time do most people eat their lunches? What time do most people eat their lunches? Well, think about that. Is there one answer? Or is there multiple answers? I mean, if we just take our sixth grade class, right? When we were in class, we all ate lunch at about what time? Right around noon. So this would not be a good statistical question because most sixth graders eat their lunch right around noon. What about the next one? What did Bob eat for lunch today? Sorry, I always use the word Bob, but what does he eat for lunch today? Well, that is only going to provide one answer, so therefore it is not a good statistical question. Next one, what do sixth graders prefer to eat for lunch? Well, that's going to be dependent on each and individual person. And that will have multiple different answers. So therefore that would be a good statistical question. So, statistical question here. Let me go back here. Statistical question here. Not here, not here. What about the last one? How many continents are there? Well, hopefully you know the answer to that. The problem is there is only one answer to that. And so therefore, this is not a statistical question. So today you're going to practice some of this. You are going to complete numbers 1 through 4 right here, 7 through 12, and then also 13, 14, and 15 for some problem solving. So I've given links in here so that you can see each one of these individually, and you'll be able to see this slide again, and hopefully you'll be able to click those videos again to help you out and answer these questions here. Statistical question is a question that would allow for many different answers, okay? Not just one. Sometimes these can get a little confusing, but go ahead and try them today and see if you can come up with the correct answers. So you'll create a Google Doc and go ahead and answer each of these questions on that Google Docs and then turn it in. So hopefully